Hey everybody, very happy to be driving a 2022 Hyundai Elantra N. N is an important letter here because N is Hyundai's performance brand. It is the letter they put after the name of the car to signify significant and real and tangible performance improvements over the base model. And this one, the Elantra N, is their compact sedan. Compact is in quotes there, air quotes. And that means that this is Hyundai's answer to things like the Honda Civic Type R, which is a proper, serious, very legit sports car in its own right. Front wheel drive or no. And, spoiler alert, this thing is a player. The Hyundai Elantra N is brand new for 2022 and is based off the 7th generation Hyundai Elantra, which was new for 2021, and that was a big improvement over the 6th generation Elantra, which was a big improvement over the 5th generation Elantra, and on and on and on. Point is that the Korean brand makes big steps and improvements every time it puts out a new car, but the 7th generation really did close in on the best of the compact car market. That makes it a fantastic baseline for a performance model such as this N. To that end, you could think of this, if you want, as a top-tier Elantra, or you can think of it as a standalone model. And because this car has just under double the horsepower of a standard Elantra, I'm going to go ahead and say it's a standalone vehicle. It is, however, one of 3 N models in the North American market for 2022, alongside the Veloster N and the Kona N. Yes, that little itty-bitty SUV has an N model. But that is going to be very short-lived because there will be no Veloster N for 2023. So realistically speaking, this is one of 2 N models, this and the Kona. But who knows, maybe something new is coming in 2023. Regardless of all that, this is a highly specific model and there aren't that many options for it, and that means that both the base and as tested price of my test car is $33,245. And there's not much you can do with the price in terms of packages and stuff like that. However, if you go with the 8-speed dual clutch transmission instead of the 6-speed manual transmission, that does cost you an extra $1,500. And that makes me a little happy, actually. With all that said, this is a good time to pull over and give you a closer look around and inside the car. All right, everybody, time to take a closer look at this quite serious, quite purposeful 2022 Hyundai Elantra N. Now, this particular car is painted in cyber gray, and that is probably the least standout part about this car, but it is a beautiful color all the same. Looking at the car from the front, you have this really nice contrast of red right on the bottom, and then the black grille, and then that lighter cyber gray paint to really give you these like bold, definite areas of the car and really make certain parts stand out. I particularly love this red right down here on the front spoiler lip. I think that's a real nice touch, and the N badge right in the grille as well. Looking at the car in profile, you can see that we've got a shark fin antenna towards the back and a nice little rear wing as well. And those red accents down low continue in the side. I'll go ahead and put the dimensions of the car up on the screen so you can see it. Pretty much matches the standard 7th generation Hyundai Elantra, which came out last year. And while we're here, I'll go ahead and tell you that I've got a complete set of specs in the description. But not only do you have that red strip going along the profile here, but you also have another N logo baked in right there. That is just behind these 19-inch front wheels right here, which definitely look the business. And behind those are sizable brakes right there. You got 14.2-inch brake rotors and fixed caliper in front. That compares to an 11-inch brake rotor on the standard Elantra. Smaller to the front, of course, but still larger than the front brakes on the standard Elantra. Those are 12-inch ventilated discs on the Elantra N instead of 10.3-inch solid discs. In addition, I'll go ahead and let you know that they use a higher friction material for these brakes as well. So, obviously more stopping power all around. And back to the front, and speaking of stopping power, it certainly doesn't hurt that we have Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires to work with. Great, great tire. Looking at the car from the back, you can see some more obvious appointments. That red strip, then black, and then matte gray, cyber gray continues to have those contrasts. But of course, you also get this full width set of tail lights running across right here, just above the Elantra N right there. And then this, I'm gonna say, almost perfectly blended combination of tasteful and aggression, this rear wing right here. Now, does this create much of any real downforce? No, it doesn't. But it does look the part without being ostentatious. You also get these very large, very cool, and very real dual exhaust tips, which I love. Also, there's some real structure to talk about in the back of this car. That is an additional rear strut tower brace right there, that red tubing in between the back of the second row seats and your trunk right there. So that adds proper stiffness to the structure. Now, according to Hyundai, that is actually only one of 7 additional structural pieces, but the rest of them are a little bit more subtle, a little bit more hidden. But you can see a little bit of structure on the front tower brace as well, but a lot of the actual structure is down at the base of the platform underneath much of the car. But there is one other thing to check out. Check out these beefy, solid engine mounts. That's very cool as well. But the rear strut tower brace definitely stands out visually the most, and is also an excellent segue to talk about trunk space. You get 14 cubic feet of trunk space, and if you need more than 14 cubic feet of space, all you have to do is pull here and here, and you can fold down the rear seat. However, obviously that strut tower brace is still there, so that does kind of curtail what you really can carry in your Elantra N. But hey, it's nice to know you have that option, and you could definitely fit skis or even like a bobsled or something through there. So it definitely increases your utility, and come on, it's definitely worth it to have the extra structure. All right, let's check out those back seats. Just like the standard Elantra, you actually have quite a bit of space in here, nearly 100 cubic feet inside the passenger compartment of the Elantra. And it is a bit on the Spartan side in here in terms of features. You know, obviously you do have power windows and those kinds of things, but you know, this is just like a pretty hard plastic here. There's no extra ports right here. You don't even have a center armrest right here, but the seats themselves are reasonably comfortable, and I do have a decent amount of space. I am 5'11" or 181 centimeters tall, and I still have a good 6 inches of knee room. I have headroom, I have shoulder room. Now the seat bottoms are a little bit on the low side, so thigh support is only decent, but for what is still considered a compact car, that's lots of space. And besides, it's way more fun up front anyway. As you open the front door, the first thing you notice, at least the first thing I noticed, were these heavily bolstered front seats right here. Look at those big and deep upper bolsters right here. Also, the lower bolsters here. This seat properly holds you in place, and I really appreciate that. These kinds of details show you the seriousness of this car. Also, it is manually adjustable. This is seat height, this is seat back, and then fore aft adjust right there. That is a lighter weight way to do it. It's a little bit cheesy to have these shoulder straps built in. This isn't really meant for shoulder straps, but hey, I guess it's legit in the sense you could put them there if you want. And besides, this illuminated N logo right here really looks cool, especially in low light. The door itself also looks nice. You have these nice 3 strips built into the texture right here, and you do get, of course, power windows, power locks, and the driver front window is auto up down. I do like this little N logo built into the kick plate right here, and the aluminum pedals, and you can see 1, 2, 3 pedals. Oh yeah, very good sign. We do have manually adjusted tilt and telescope steering. Oh, and as I just sit down in the seat, I am reminded that it is 4/10 of an inch or 10 millimeters lower to the ground than a standard Elantra. Anyway, push button starts right here, clutch in. You've got a fully digital instrument cluster screen right there, and then right next to it, a 10.25 inch, 10.25 inch center console touchscreen right here. Beneath that, you do get dual zone climate control and heated seats and some other lovely bits right there. You do also have multiple USB ports to play with right there, as well as Qi wireless charging beneath that. Below that, you have drive modes. Of course, you have drive modes. I'll talk more about those in a minute. And camera options right there. And that's right next to this beautiful 6-speed manual transmission. It is such a delight to be able to shift on my own here. Really appreciate that this is not only an option in the Elantra N, this is standard equipment. Beneath that, we do get a couple of cup holders, and this is a little removable tray. So if you want, like, I don't know, for your espresso, or maybe you just want to hold some change in one of them, that's what that's for. You do have a handbrake here, and then more space in the loader center console. I do like this little grab handle right here. I think that's a nice touch. And as we look up, you'll notice there's not much else here. There's no moonroof or anything like that, and that is a good thing because that is lighter weight, keeps the center of gravity lower, and gives you more headroom. All right, looking at the steering wheel, it is a real nice thick rim, easy to grab onto, nice leather wrap around it, and of course you've got lots of buttons. This is for cruise control, and this is for media and those kinds of things. But a couple of interesting things. This is a standard, not adaptive cruise control, but it also has some highway driving assists, which is like lane centering and that kind of stuff. So that's a really interesting combination, to have the lane centering, but to not have adaptive cruise control. You also have an N button on the left-hand side, another N button on the right-hand side, and you'll notice that one is lightly colored, one is filled in. And then beneath the one on the right-hand side is a rev button. For the manual transmission cars, you have a rev matching option, but these N buttons are actually customizable, and that brings us to a couple of neat features of the center console touchscreen. Now, you have easy access. This is your home screen, and you just have to slide your finger over to get to a lot of the different options, and there's 2 pages worth of those, but there's just a couple I want to touch on. First is N mode. N mode is this beauty right here, and it gives you some important information about the car itself. Also, this in of itself has 2 screen options, so I can dial it here and you can see that I have all these different options, and this one right here is what my custom drive mode is. I'm going to move down here. This is your drive mode button. If I press this, it shows 3 drive modes: Eco, Normal, and Sport. But you have more than that, okay? I'll put it back to normal, and as you can see, the instrument cluster changes screens as you change to the different drive modes. But aside from Sport drive mode, you also have N drive mode, which is kind of like the Sport Plus or real maximum drive mode, and you also have custom drive mode. You have all these different adjustments on how the custom drive mode works. And one in particular, exhaust sound, has way more options than you would ever think you need, or really do you even want. Now, you also get a launch control, which is kind of only a so-so cool thing to have in a manual transmission car. Obviously, if you were to get the 8-speed dual clutch transmission, that would have more potency. But there's another thing I want to show you on the screen. So back to home, setup, button. You can customize what these N buttons do. And there's also, this star is also another customizable button. And you can choose among all these different things what these different buttons would do. And all this brings us back to the custom drive mode and the different options you have. You have 3 different noise levels of exhaust sound. You can have normal, Sport, and Sport Plus exhaust sound levels. You can also go to menu, go to performance options. You also have active sound design, and you have 4 different options here as well. You can personalize it. You can have sporty, high performance, or TCR. TCR is a racing class, and there is a Hyundai TCR race car. You can personalize the sound, and in that place, you have settings here. You can choose between how much whine you get, how much bass you get, and how throaty it sounds. Later in this video, I will go through the different sounds so you can hear what they sound like, but I just wanted to quickly show you how many options you have just for the sound your car makes. A lot of these differences are not the actual exhaust system, but the car stereo system that's doing that work. So it is ultimately fake stuff, but I mean, in this world, there's so much of that. Might as well play with it, see if it's any fun. Speaking of which, let's get back to the drive and do some playing around. Time to talk powertrain, and I'm very happy to do so because in this Elantra N, we have a turbocharged 2-liter inline 4-cylinder engine that makes 276 horsepower and 289 pound-feet of torque. Yes, Those are very, very healthy numbers. And it's kind of like a classic engine in a lot of ways. You get a square bore and stroke, 86 millimeters for both of them, and you get a 9.5-to-1 compression ratio, which would have been a really high number for a turbocharged engine 10 years ago, but these days it's a little bit more run-of-the-mill, so a little bit more classic numbers. But with the power output that it brings, I am not complaining. As I mentioned earlier, you get 2 transmission options. The base standard transmission is this 6-speed manual transmission, which is so delightful, but you can spend an extra $1,500 and get an 8-speed dual clutch transmission. And yes, if you do get launch control, and you also get this like little overboost feature that'll actually feed you a little bit extra horsepower for 20-second segments, and it will need at least a 40-second break after you do it. But you're paying for that, not just literally, but also in terms of weight. The weight difference between a manual transmission Elantra N and a dual clutch is 110 pounds. And you know that the vast majority of that weight, if not all of it, is going to be on the front axle. The manual transmission is the way to go for engagement, for enjoyment, and for like lightness, liveliness reaction times for the front end. This is, of course, a front wheel drive model. No, that's not ideal, but that is completely common in this class of car. And it is quite all right. Like I mentioned before already, the Civic Type R is front wheel drive and epically good. Besides, this does come with an electronically controlled limited slip differential, which makes a huge difference in putting down power at corner exit, which I will tell you, this does very, very well. Considering all those things, this actually gets pretty darn decent fuel economy as well. 22 miles to the gallon in the city, 31 miles to the gallon on the highway, and 25 combined for a manually transmission car. 6 speeds when most anything else these days has 8, 9, or even 10 speeds. So I was pleasantly surprised with those numbers. Pleasantly surprised with fuel economy numbers is one thing, enjoying yourself because you're going flat out and accelerating is another. And I will tell you that this car is a lot of fun to accelerate in. It makes great noises and has surprisingly good pull. It's smooth in its delivery. It's got real nice tones coming out of the exhaust and proper heaps of torque that it throws at even at the lower revs. But just going through the gears once or twice while we're talking, that's not enough. I had to do an acceleration test. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for an acceleration test. I do have the car in N mode, but I also turned off traction control completely, and it's a manual transmission, so we'll see what we can do. It does have a launch control, but I'm not going to use it. Pretty low revs, it's a turbo motor. Oof. Pretty brutal axle shudder from the beginning, but good acceleration and nice acceleration and nice snarl from the exhaust too. Yeah, this is a nice little accelerating car. Yeah, fun, right? You know, the axle hop was a little frustrating, but otherwise very good. Earlier on, I mentioned that we have much bigger brakes and even different brake pad material on this Elantra, which I think merits a braking test. After all, we have those really nice Michelin tires as well. So I'm going around 60 miles an hour, and I'll just go ahead and hit the brakes right about now. Oh, impressively good. Impressively good braking. Yeah, you can see it just jumped right on its nose like that, but this is a proper performance sedan, to be sure. Okay, so you know this car has a bit of athleticism in a straight line. That's a nice start, but for something like this, you gotta know how well it handles corners. Of course, I had to take it on a handling test. Let me show you that right now. All right, everybody, time for a handling test. I do have the car in N mode, which maximizes engine, steering, suspension, and puts stability control in sport. So let's see how it goes. Good snarl from the exhaust. I love a little kickback in the overrun. Yeah, not bad. Good body control. Not huge amounts of grip, but good body control. Yeah, the steering is fast and responsive. You know, get good reactions from the front end. It's nice and heavily weighted, so it's easy to be precise. You know, not tons of feel, but you get some feedback through the wheel. Yeah, that was a good experience. That was let's do it again good enough experience. Yeah, so we don't have tons of grip from these tires. You know, it's moderate grip, but it's really not bad. And the body is really well controlled. I'm very impressed with that. And equally so, the front end is more responsive than I would have guessed. So it does really give you that proper performance feel. Overall, really properly good. This is a fun handling car. Good, right? So this has adjustable shock absorbers at 3 different levels. You also have faster steering than you do in a standard Elantra, and you also have a 5-link suspension in the back and struts up front. Struts up front, multi-link in back. That's not anything hugely different than most cars out there, but it was tuned well. And Hyundai did put in those extra bracing, so this is a stiffer structure than the standard Elantra. I think that helps as well. But overall, it doesn't really matter. The point is, it's quite quick and it's quite entertaining. I don't care where you live. I don't care what you do for a living. There are gonna be times that you just need to putter around and get from point A to point B. And I'm here to tell you that the Elantra N can do that plenty comfortably. First of all, these are fantastic seats, very supportive for when the going gets spirited, but also that means comfortable as well when you just need to putz around. Also, because you have the 3 different shock absorber settings, the normal setting, the calmest one, isn't that bad. Yes, this car is always a little bit on the stiff side. The spring rate and the anti-roll bars and all that will dictate that to a certain extent, but nothing about this ride is jarring or unpleasant. In my opinion, it just might be a little bit stiff for some. And that is true on roads like this or on the interstate. I took it out there. Let me show you that. All right, everybody. Time for a little jaunt on the interstate. See how this Elantra N rides, feels on the road. I have it back in normal driving mode, stability control, traction controls back on, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, of course, we have a bunch of driving aids, some lane centering and all that, so we're gonna give that a go as well. But most importantly, I'm curious to see how the ride is, what wind noise is like, what road noise is like, and all that kind of fun stuff. And we've got a healthy amount of traffic to test that. We are, of course, in 6th gear with this manual transmission, and by today's standards, cruising speed is pretty high. We're looking at 2,900 RPM while we're cruising with traffic around 80 miles an hour. So it is a little bit on the loud side, but this is a very well-tuned exhaust. With the lane centering, I'm gonna let go of the steering wheel, see how it goes. You can feel it moving around in your hands, even when your hands are on the wheel. It's leaning a little bit to the left. It seems to react to little undulations in the road a little bit, but generally speaking, we're staying pretty close to the center of the road, so that's well done. And yeah, cruise control works just fine, of course. This is regular cruise control, not adaptive cruise control, so distance following, all that stuff, that's a non-issue. It's interesting that we have the lane centering, but not the adaptive cruise control. That's a little bit rare. Wind noise is pretty darn good, actually, pretty well isolated. This is a quieter car than I would have guessed. And road noise is actually pretty well subdued. So generally speaking, this is a much more pleasant car to be on the interstate than I would have guessed. Now the ride is a touch on the stiff side. You kind of get a nice little hop over each little, expansion joint or bump in the road, but it's certainly not jarring by any means. So generally speaking, I'm actually pleasantly surprised with how good this is on the interstate. Just like there's no escaping the realities of having to get from point A to point B sometimes, this is a brand new car and there's no escaping the realities of modern driver aids. Of course, this Hyundai has some. I'll go ahead and put them on the screen right there, but as I've already mentioned, it's actually kind of notable that it doesn't have adaptive cruise control. But what this car does have, as I mentioned, it's this myriad of options of engine sounds. And it seems wrong to me to just show you that on a screen. So I actually went out and played around with that some. Let me show you that right now. Okay, this is a first for me. A exhaust sound test. So I'm currently in third gear right now, but what I'm going to do is I will switch to the different sounds and then do a pull in third gear so you can hear the difference and then talk about it. So anyway, right now I'm in the normal driving mode. I'm going to go ahead and put it in my custom driving mode because that's how you can change all this stuff. I have it set to sporty exhaust and I have it in the normal exhaust sound level. Totally good. That's a totally pleasant, reasonable, turbocharged 4-cylinder sound. Now I'll put it in sport. And that is a much throatier, beefier kind of sound. It's good. I like it even more. But now let's do Sport Plus. And it really comes alive. You can really hear it resonate. It's a great, great sound. It's loud and it's good. I like that a lot. I'm gonna leave it in the loud exhaust sound from now on, but I'm gonna change it to one level up from that, high performance. And it's even louder and throatier still. You know, I don't think it sounds hugely different from the other noise, but I'd say if anything, it's a little bit louder. But now, let's change it to TCR. And that's a distinctly different noise. There's like a higher pitch ring to it. I don't know if it's better. It's definitely different, but I don't know if it's better. And it's also definitely not the actual engine. That is the sound system and software helping that along. So, I don't know. I have kind of mixed feelings about that. But there is one more sound I'm going to do. That is my personal custom sound. So I'm going to change it to that now. Now this one was limited whine, but maximum throatiness and bassiness. So we'll see how that sounds. Yeah, I don't know. I think sporty is the closest to the actual exhaust sound, and I think that's the best. Although I will say that the loudest version of it is also the best. And I will also say that it is kind of fun that you can have that many options for your exhaust. I think all of that is quite interesting. If you're going to be fake, at least have some fun with it, and Hyundai definitely did that, so hats off to them for it. Yeah, I mean, why not, right? TCR car, sure. Putting it together, I mentioned it at the top, this thing is legit. This ticks all the boxes. Fast steering, sporty and supportive seats, real grip from real tires, properly tuned suspension with adjustment, limited slip differential, good balance front to rear in terms of chassis. All of those things are good on their own, and critically, they are put together really well. The Elantra N functions as one cohesive, fun-to-drive unit. This is fantastic to drive, fun to be in, right on the borderline in terms of looks for me. You know, it's a little bit loud and ostentatious visually, but it's acceptable in my mind, and it doesn't matter because the driving is so good it makes up for it. In a real moment of irony, I think my least favorite part about this car is the 6-speed manual transmission. Not the transmission itself, it's great, but the shifter, it's a little bit, the throws are a little bit on the long side. It's a tiny touch clunky. It is not as good as, in my opinion, the benchmark, the Honda Civic Type R. That 6-speed manual is so perfectly precise and good. This is reasonable, it is good, but compared to how strong the rest of the elements of the car are, that was just a little bit underneath those things. But all told, the price is really good, and the performance is there, and the engagement and enjoyment is there too. I'm Robin Warner, thank you for watching, and if you are still watching, I would really appreciate it if you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Those things really do help me out a lot. Okay, goodbye. That's downshift, why not? Oh, yeah! Yes!